for the Rutherford County School, July 18th, 2023. First on the agenda tonight will be Mr. Young with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, everybody, for being back. A little break in our schedule, so it's not completely 100% back. That's next week. But next on our agenda is a moment of silence, and we're going to ask specifically for Coach Wells and his family and the Riverdale family. Okay. First on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they want moved or they have any questions? Once again, it's a lot of our coaches, stipends and things like that. This is a yearly event. No visitors tonight, except one really special visitor who's going to be up next. If nobody has any comments or questions, I'm going to move to the next item. Dr. Grisham is here with TSBA, and she's going to go over Dr. Sullivan's annual review. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Sharp and members of the board and Dr. Sullivan. I believe you all know the score that Dr. Sullivan received, but just to recap the importance of doing the evaluation for the superintendent, it's one of your key leadership responsibilities, but it's really a summary of how well the school district has done. And I think that you all should be very proud of this evaluation. Dr. Sullivan has come in, hit the ground running, and done a fantastic job. I'll just start with the overall score. It's just like kids or anyone else. Let's get to the good stuff first. The overall score was a 4.43 on a 5-point scale, which is outstanding. So Dr. Sullivan, thank you for your leadership, and to the board for, you have to have a good strategic plan and an evaluation instrument that complements that plan along with complementing your budget. So kudos to everyone with that. But just to recap, the evaluation has 3 parts. The first part we're going to talk about is, if you will turn, is the administrator's portion. And he got a 4.52 out of 5. There were 15 items that the cabinet level and principals evaluated Dr. Sullivan on. These are the folks that worked most closely with him. And they had those items, and he got a 4.52, and those are indicated there on Section 1, Appendix 1. We also listed the comments that administrators had to say about Dr. Sullivan and his leadership, and those are the 2 pages following that Appendix A. The next section is Appendix B, the board observational data. These are items that are listed in the law, and I say this section's basically any superintendent should possess and be able to meet these standards and exceed in these standards. And the first one is board relationship. He received a 4.27 out of that section. Community relationship, a 4.49. Staff and personnel relationships, 4.52. Facilities and finance, 4.5. Vision, 4.57. Student achievement, 4.58. Management and operations, 4.48. Integrity, fairness, and ethics, 4.41. Political, social, cultural context, 4.45. So excellent evaluations, and an average of those in Appendix B was a 4.45. So excellent scores in that section on Appendix B. Appendix C to me is one of the most important sections because it's specific to your district. It is aligned with your strategic plan. These things in Appendix C typically change every year. So once you complete something in your strategic plan, check it off. You pull the other items that you're going to try to get done. You cannot get your strategic plan done in a year. So you pick the items for next year. So when you start, Chairman Sharp, to do the evaluation for the next school year, we need to update these Appendix C items. The first, Objective 1, to ensure there's a continuous improvement plan for student achievement and growth, 4.55, excellent score. Performance Objective 2, develop a school district strategic plan, 4.43. The next objective, develop a comprehensive plan, the next one is to evaluate the organizational structure, 4.43, develop a comprehensive plan to promote the school system and increase parent and community involvement, 4.43. Work with the school board to develop and implement an annual plan promoting school system and increasing communication and support with the county commission, 4.29. Develop a budget for the school board as outlined in school policies, in the annual agenda, and the guidelines established by the State Department, 4.57. Ensure the board's annual agenda is developed and implemented, 4.57. Provide and promote activities that give the school board an opportunity to review its effectiveness, improve the relationship between school board members and the school board as a whole with the director, 4.29. And an overall of all of those 8 objectives, an overall score for Appendix C was a 4.44. And at the last page is the additional comments that were made by certain school board members that chose to. Those are listed there on the last page. And as I mentioned before, Dr. Sullivan's score, I'll repeat it again, an overall score of a 4.43 on a 5-point scale. So excellent job. So that is my report.
Well, thank you for coming out during
Absolutely.
the flood and the storm and the tornado.
Yeah.
I wish you could have come tomorrow night, so maybe we would have missed that, but we look forward to this weekend.
Yes, and I'm glad most of you are coming. We've got a huge crowd at Summer Law Institute, and for you board members that don't know, we've asked Dr. Sullivan and I think Tammy are coming to our annual convention in November. We wanted to do something on student growth, and I think y'all know a little bit about that, right? Student growth. So we thought it would be good for all the districts across the state to hear about what you all are doing, how you're handling the student growth. So they're going to be doing a clinic at the convention. So I hope all of you will come out to that. We've got a great program plan for that as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 8.
All right, number 8 is Human Resources Tab 2. So this is a memorandum of understanding with professional educators, the Board of Education Management Team, and the professional educators of Rutherford County, represented by the Rutherford Education Association, and the collaborative process has reached agreement as presented in this memorandum of understanding. I mentioned this to you all yesterday. My recommendation is going to be that we table this for one more month. There are a couple items, one, and I've talked with our REA president, I talked with her as well today to make sure that we were all kind of on the same team. It's a process that is set out in law as far as collaborative conferencing goes, but the board nor myself are a member of that. And so the REA has a team, we have a team. Dr. Anthony has kind of served as our lead for that team. One of the things I just kind of wanted to call to your attention, I put an executive memorandum from Gallagher, which serves as kind of our go-between for insurance. So a very simple point that I would like the team to go back and look at is around insurance. So insurance, for example, the way that it's currently written is that in that MOU, it talks about always doing 80% of our insurance plans. When we were a private group, when we were with Cigna with the county by ourselves, that was something that was pretty easy to be able to do. We're now with the state plan, and so we don't have as much, I guess, just leverage when we're working with somebody and we're a member of that big of a group. Let's say that the state currently offers 4 plans. Next year, they could offer 6. We really don't know how many they would offer. Let's say they offered 1 and one of them went up 26%. We may not be able to support 80% of whatever that huge increase was. For those teachers and employees who have been in the county, this kind of happened. We had was it a high deductible or a copay over the last couple of years? One of them has phased out through the county as well. And so that would be a similar instance to where as a county, we may not be able financially to be able to look at doing 80% of every single plan. So my proposal is to go back to the team and say 80% of at least one plan as a minimum. We would hope to be able to offer more than that, but it just depends. Since this MOU is for 3 years at a time, I want to make sure that we set ourselves up in a good area. The other one, can you actually go to the MOU? There was one, and I think this is just probably just a miss in the typing. It involved a non-administrative workday. Let me see what actual chapter that is in. So there is a chapter that talks, I'm just kind of scrolling through, I believe it was, Dr. Anthony, you know off the top of your head which one that would have been? 8 or not 7, 8? Let's see. All right, it is in chapter 10. So if you'll go to chapter 10 and then scroll to the second page, it talks about non-instructional workday. So this is a minor point, but it is looking out for making sure that we're being fair to everyone. This talks about a non-instructional workday is one in which students are not in school, but professional employees report to work, with the exception of parent-teacher conferences. Non-instructional workday shall be 7½ hours, and then it talks about including a 1½ hour duty-free lunch. To my knowledge, we've always done 8 to 3. So I'm not sure that I would want to put in writing making people take an extra 30 minutes of unpaid lunch into an MOU. So my recommendation to the team is to go back and look at keeping it 7 hours and 1 hour instead of requiring people to work extra what they don't need. So there's a couple other minor details in here as well that I would like for us just to kind of look at. But as board members, during the next 2 weeks, if you guys will read over this MOU, if there's anything in particular that you have an issue with or have a problem with, a lot of it follows state law, but a lot of it does just go back to things that our teams have kind of worked through as well. I know that sometimes these can get caught between the political narratives, but these are our local teachers and what they have worked through with our team to try to make the best working conditions possible for both sides. One of the reasons that you never see wages or anything like that mentioned, that's an item in Tennessee Code Annotated that's not allowed to be discussed. But when we are looking at it, we also have to make sure that insurance portion, kind of why I talked about it as well. But Ms. Hull, the REA president, was aware of that conversation that we were going to have. I met with her about this today. So, questions, comments? I'm happy to answer any of them.
Before we close this point, because I'm new to this, is there a time frame that this has to be approved by?
No, and in fact, when any professional organization, so this one just happens to be REA, we also have professional educators of Tennessee that if they would have met their 15% threshold, they also would have been involved in that. They just didn't meet this. That says that we then go into collaborative conferencing. There is no requirement or time frame that it has to be done within because we're still technically in that collaborative conferencing time frame.
Okay.
However, when it comes to the board then would vote on it as a whole. And when there are areas that I think both sides need to look at, I'd much rather us go back and have it fine-tuned before that.
Is there anything in here that somebody who's not a part of the REA or the professional educators of Rutherford County, is there anything in here that would be different for someone who's not a part of it?
It represents everyone.
Number 9.
All right, number 9, transportation, tab 3. So job title modifications, request a modified job title and job description as presented. Special transportation routing coordinator to transportation routing supervisor. And then the second one, job description for customer service, AM dispatcher, job title change as well. And then you have one on the next page, which is a voluntary termination of bus contract number 125. And we'll take each one of those separately tomorrow.
Any questions?
Do you know what the range are? I don't think there's any change in pay for these job descriptions, are there?
All right, so the first one, we're modifying the transportation routing coordinator. That was a single position who did all the work. And we're modifying it to be transportation routing supervisor because this year we have 2 new positions. One of those positions is a transportation router. So this position is for a supervisor, someone that will be working with all the routers. They will still be routing, but they will also be supervising 2 additional people, which will make them a salaried versus an hourly. So it's a created position, but we're utilizing the router, that same job description, and basically the only difference is this one is still doing the work, but it's also adding the additional supervisory aspect to it. The second one is a totally new position. It's part of the ones that was added this year through our budget. Customer service and AM dispatcher. One of the things that we're doing through the transportation department this year is our volume of calls coming in, parents, what bus does my child ride? My child missed the bus today. The bus came 10 minutes early, came 15 minutes late. My child's being bullied, all these kind of things. The number of these calls, we've had one person trying to deal with this. The other thing we've been trying to utilize our existing systems. We use OneDrive, where one of the things I did when I started is because I couldn't keep up with them. So I created like a daily diary on OneDrive where it was live, where like if a bus called in and said they're broken down and another bus is coming in, if you took the call, or if I took the call, I could put it on OneDrive, and the other 3 people in the office had OneDrive open. They saw it at the same time I typed it, so that they automatically knew that that bus was down and another bus was taking its place. We've grown too large for these types of things now. So one of the things we're starting this year is a customer service, which is this position, customer service supervisor and AM dispatcher, and we're starting a new app this year. It'll be on our website where parents can go to and actually log in, just like they're looking for a bus number or whatever, they'll be able to log in their complaint. This person will now be in charge of following through with those complaints, and this app will help us all manage this so that we don't have a phone call that you take that you talked about to one person but it didn't get to the third person. This app is going to help us manage all of these calls and make sure that we're more customer service friendly to our constituents, and this app's really going to help us. So this position will be managing that, along with, we're going to start with 2 people where we had 1 last year. We're going to have 2 this year, and the app. We've got some other things that we're going to be bringing forward this year, but that's this position, so I'm hoping this works. We may need another person for next year, but we think right now we're going to start with 2.
That's excellent, because transportation's needed some help for a while. Yeah, we're just too big.
109 was the first one and 104. R109 is the first position, R104 is the second.
Okay.
And that's always listed in our job descriptions now.
The app is new. Do we have a plan on how we're going to communicate that to the parents before school starts?
We're going to talk about it tomorrow in our principal meeting. We will do some blast outs, and it will be on the website starting at the start of school.
Are we going to make the call to the parents as well?
We will. We'll have it broken down across the month, all the different information we put out.
Great, because we were one area that the bus was always late. Not because it was just we had a lot of kids, and by the time they came to our bus stop, the bus was already full. So,
Any more questions? Number 10.
All right, number 10. So one change on number 10, because we discussed this in policy. I'd like to request, fees first. I was getting excited to talk about policies. So legal tab 4, 2324, approved fees. Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Per policy 6.709, prior to the beginning of each school year, the board, upon the recommendation of the principals and the director of school, shall approve all student fees for the upcoming school year. Additional fees may be approved during the year as needed. It's something we do every year.
Any comments or questions? Okay, now.
Now I can get to policy adoptions.
time.
All right. So it says first and final reading. Like we talked about during our policy meeting, I'd like to request that policy 4.403, library materials, have 2 readings. And so I'd like to request we pull that one out and read it as a first reading tomorrow, and then have it a second reading
And
in August.
it can go in the
Yes.
recommended
Yep.
approval of 2 motions.
So is everyone all right with that? That's what we discussed in policy. Okay. All right, so I will go through, since this is our work session for our first reading, I will read these for our work session. So the below policy changes are recommended on the first and final reading as they are necessary to take effect before the start of the 23-24 school year. A, policy 1.102, board members legal, adds other types of high school equivalency credentials approved by the State Board of Education pursuant to change in state law. B, policy 1.106, code of ethics, adds point of contact for the Tennessee Ethics Commission pursuant to change in state law. C, policy 1.400, school board meetings, adds 2 additional qualifying reasons for board members to attend regular or special meetings electronically pursuant to change in state law. D, policy 1.402, notification of meetings, adds that notice of all meetings with actionable items on the agenda, with some exceptions, shall include information on how community members can participate in the public comment portion of the board meeting. This change is pursuant to change in state law. E, policy 1.901, charter school applications, adds language requiring presentation of review committee's findings to the board. F, policy 3.202, emergency preparedness plan, adds armed intruder drill, incident command drill, and emergency safety bus drill pursuant to change in state law. G, policy 3.205, security, adds language mandating that all exterior doors shall be locked at all times and access shall be limited to primary entrance. Also adds that after-school activities that require an unlocked door shall have an employee stationed at the door to ensure access is limited to authorized persons only. This change is pursuant to change in state law. H, policy 4.300, extracurricular activities, adds requirement of parents and guardians to opt in before a minor child can join a school club or participate in activities of the club pursuant to change in state law. I, we're going to again add to a second reading, but it's policy 4.403, library materials, adds process with several tiers of review of library materials pursuant to change in state law. And Monica, we made a change on this one, or wasn't there one addition? Does everyone have a copy, or is it just me? Okay. All right, so we will have this one for you tomorrow. It is going to be the very last line on the policy, and it will say a notation will be added in the library database regarding the removed book, just so there is a record of that in our database. So that was the only change. I just wanted to highlight that to everyone's attention. All right, J, policy 5.106, application to employment, adds language that districts may not hire individuals who appear on lists of perpetrators of child abuse and abuse of vulnerable persons or similar lists from other states pursuant to change in state law. K, policy 5.110, compensation guides and contracts, updates employment experience for career and technical education, occupational education teachers. L, policy 5.119, employment of retirees, removes requirement that the director of school certifies in writing that no other qualified personnel were available to fill the position before hiring a retiree pursuant to a change in state law, thank goodness. M, policy 5.302, sick leave, adds option for employees to use sick bank days to care for minor children in addition to being used for the employee's own illness pursuant to a change in state law. Additionally, removes language that the state's retired personnel cannot earn sick leave. In policy 5.305, family medical leave, adds 6 weeks of paid leave for certain employees after the birth, stillbirth, or adoption of a newly placed minor child pursuant to a change in state law. O, policy 5.307, physical assault leave, clarifies that teachers will receive their full salary benefits while on leave due to a physical assault pursuant to a change in state law. P, policy 5.310, vacations and holidays, adds Juneteenth to the list of holidays pursuant to a change in state law. Additionally, adds to a 10-hour workday for Juneteenth and July 4th for holiday pay purposes for all 12-month employees and a 4-day work week during the summer months. Q, Policy 5.600, Staff Rights and Responsibilities, adds that teachers are required to report students who commit certain offenses, assault and battery or vandalism, on school property that endanger the life, health, or safety of others pursuant to a change in state law. R, Policy 6.202, Homeschools, removes requirement of proof of immunization for the student, also requires the acceptance of high school equivalency credentials approved by the State Board of Education for parents and guardians pursuant to a change in state law. S, Policy 6.300, Code of Conduct, adds threats of mass violence to the list of zero-tolerance offenses punishable by a one-year expulsion pursuant to a change in state law. T, Policy 6.303, Interrogations and Searches, changes wording from interrogation to questioning by school personnel. U, Policy 6.309, Zero-Tolerance Offenses, adds threats of mass violence to the list of zero-tolerance offenses punishable by a one-year expulsion pursuant to a change in state law. V, Policy 6.319, Alternative Education, adds additional statutory reason for director of schools to require a student to serve a suspension at home rather than on school property if it endangers the safety of the students or staff pursuant to a change in state law. And we're still moving on. W, Policy 6.4001, Student Surveys, Analysis, and Evaluations, adds requirement of parents, guardians to opt in before a minor child participates in a non-instructional survey, analysis, or evaluation pursuant to a change in state law. X, Policy 6.402, Physical Examinations and Immunizations, adds language to give parents, guardians the ability to opt out of health screenings conducted as part of the Coordinated School Health Program pursuant to a change in state law. And then we will add library again to this one for the recommended approval of two motions. So you'll see recommended approval motion to suspend the board policy for the others, and then we will add library onto this to have a second reading. Are there any other ones the board would like called out to be on a second reading as well? That's perfectly fine.
I think you do a great job speed reading.
I was sitting there thinking
you need
as
a
I
Mountain Dew.
as I was reading, and I was like, why don't I have Monica reading this? That crossed my mind about 5 times as I was reading all of those.
So number 11 is instruction, and Jared McLeod will be here from Springs tomorrow night to present and give us an update. Number 12.
All right, number 12, financial matters. And so anytime that we're accepting state grants, the board has to approve it. So this is the grant for voluntary pre-K. The VPK grant is used to partially fund our 22 voluntary pre-K programs that are housed in 15 of our elementary schools. 13 classrooms are in Smyrna and Laverne, our highest areas of need. All classrooms are at capacity, 20 students per class, with more than 90% of the students and families served qualifying based on household incomes at or below the poverty level. The program is designed to reach Rutherford County's at-risk early learners. The monies afforded to us by this grant help to ensure that all students have supplies and high-quality materials available to them at all times in our VPK classrooms.
Any comments or questions? Number 13?
All right, number 13, Special Education, tab 5. So request for approval of the lease for the house located at 1607 Elrod Street, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 37130. The property will be utilized for the Transition Academy. The Transition Academy is for students who are 18 to 22 and have graduated high school with a special education diploma. Students who are exposed to a variety of community experiences as well as independent living skills that would not be possible in the traditional school setting. Starting August 1st, 2023, it will be $16.50 per month and paid by IDEA. And this is a continuation of a program that is amazing for our students, and then if we had more seats, we would grow it for sure.
How much was it before? You know.
Dr. Rod, I don't know. I'll look, see how much it was before.
I thought it was like 1,500.
Yeah, it's gone up just,
I'm just talking. I've seen the building. It's not great.
Yeah.
And it's a house. It's basically an old house that it's on MTSU.
Looks like it's old.
But I would like to see us, we paid this forever. I mean, I think Corey said that they paid it every, and it's doing a lot of good. I love Transition Academy. I wish we had 2 of these so we could more. I would like to see us potentially look to build our own or move it to where we can house more children and we can create what we want rather than modifying a house that was gifted and letting us, you see what I'm saying? Because they learn so much. They learn how to a budget, they learn how to clean a house, they learn how to they learn a lot of things at these houses. Do laundry, but it's not big enough. It's really not. And I would like to see us have something down the road that And we can modify it and we can build what we want. That's just my point.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't see why we're leasing something like this. This is something that we should have already had it paid for. This debt wouldn't even be
Yeah, we keep paying.
discussed right now if we own the building. So, we definitely need to take a serious look at this before we enter into another lease. How long is this lease? 1 year? 1 year. Now that it rolls around next year, we need to have a plan.
Or get a discount from MTSU for graduation, since we pay them $1,650 per month.
Yeah, just like our graduation discount. Any more comments or questions on special ed? Number 14.
All right, so I'll read it, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Lee to kind of go over some analysis. So this is 14, Engineering and Construction, tab 6, 814 South Church Street. The board's contracted for the purchase for 814 South Church Street. The contract was subject to a 30-day inspection period and then a 30-day lease investigation period. School system has completed its inspections of the property and obtained estimates for the renovations needed to the building. The purchase price for the building and estimated cost of renovations needed are $2,611,523, which equates to a cost of $208.92 per square foot. This cost is less than the cost to build a new building. If the board desires to move forward with the purchase of the property, the contract requires the board to give notice of its election to proceed to closing prior to the end of the inspection period, which expires on July 23rd, 2023. Trey, I'll turn it over to you.
I think at the board's request at our last meeting, they asked for a copy of all the reports. I also put together a little short estimate of what we thought, based on what we'd seen, what it was going to take. The building, for those who have not seen, it's part of our backup, all the reports are, but the bones of the building's good. You know, it looks its age on the inside. It's got some nice paneling and some shag carpet, and it's going to need some TLC once we determine what we're going to do with it. But the bones of the building are good. I don't think, and I put in the estimate, I don't think we can build a building for what we can purchase this building for. We've done our due diligence. We've made you aware of the flood implications. I think there's some things that we can do there that we can minimize that potential effect. That's not to say that sometime in the future that the basement of the building may not get some water in it. But I think if the building suits the board for its intended purpose and the size of the building and the square footage, I kind of look at it as an investment. Can we get our money back? I think the answer to that would be yes. And I think part of the reason it's been sitting is the fact that it is a little bit in the floodplain, and the appearance is 1970. It's going to take a little money to clean it up, but for that space, for that dollar figure, from a structural standpoint, is the building sound? We think it is, and we've given you estimates on what we think it'll take to fix it. Other than that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Lee, what are we looking at putting into this building? What are our ideas? I mean, I know it's not set in stone, but I'd just kind of like to know what our ideas are.
I'll
Alternative
defer
school.
to Dr. Sullivan.
Do you know
Alternative school. That's
top to bottom?
as much as we can get, depending on the way the leasings shake out.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, the tenants.
How are we on tenants and,
Mr. Reed, do you know any?
and getting some of them new places to live and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the inspection period on this contract really was twofold. Phase 1 is the typical inspection period, which we've completed now. Phase 2 is the lease inspection period. So we have not yet gone to the lease inspection period. So if we give notice that we are electing to close and purchase the property, then that will let the landlord know, yes, we do want this property, and then we'll begin the process of contacting tenants and seeing if we can get the requisite number of tenants out of the building. So that will be the next phase of this if the board moves forward with the election to purchase the property.
And there is going to be a contingency on this inspection period, correct? With the inspection, the lease inspection, there's going to be contingency?
There's contingency that we get a sufficient number of the tenants out of the building so we can use it for our uses, yes.
Okay, and if it's determined that some of these tenants are not able to leave within whatever, we can get out of it?
Correct.
Okay.
If it's not acceptable to the board and the staff here, we can't get out of the contract.
How long is the period for the inspection?
30 days.
Oh, it's still 30 days?
So if the board gives notice of the election to proceed with phase 2, then what will happen, the landlord will immediately contact tenants, say, hey, we have a prospective purchase of the building, we're going to ask you to terminate your lease early. Are you willing to do that? If so, there'll be some paperwork to sign in that regard, and we'll get that process started.
Lee, do you have any plans to address the exterior? Is that included in some of the?
It's been recently painted. The rock is dependent upon whether you like it or you don't. It can be addressed. I think we can look at some things once we know that the building's going to be ours. It would be very easy to add lath and plaster over the top of that and make it a different architectural feature. You could also take it off and we'd be back to lath and plaster or, brick or something else. But yes, it can be addressed.
Awesome. And this, the inspection period will be July 23rd, so if it does pass, I assume the next inspection period would end August 23rd as far as the tenants?
Correct, yes.
After that, we'd sign a contract if we moved, if the board so decided.
Yeah, so we proceed to go ahead and close on so if everything's satisfactory with respect to the lease contingency and the board chooses to move forward based on the number of tenants we're able to get out of the building, then we would close within 30 days thereafter.
If all that happened, how quickly could we start construction?
My recommendation would be that if we get to August 31st and there is a substantial enough number that's out and we sign a contract, the day you sign the contract while Mr. Reed's going through the legal process to close, that's when I would begin the process of putting out bids for the HVAC. Knowing that at that point who will and who won't still be in the building will determine how much I can modify at that time.
With that said, do you think it's still possible? I know HVAC, we talked about that earlier. It involves a lot of trades and there's backlogs on material and supplies and all that. Do you think we could still use it this year? You think it might possibly be useful in December? I'm saying if everything goes well.
If everything went super duper perfect,
Which it never does.
which it doesn't in my world, I would think we could at least probably have the basement area usable by Christmas, and I think that's probably the area that's the largest and we could get in the quickest.
Sure.
It is one tenant in the entire basement, so that may be an area where we could gain access to a decent-sized chunk right off the bat fairly quickly. The rest of it, until I know what tenants are staying, who's going, it's kind of hard to give you a definitive answer that you would like.
We'll get more clarity after the next
I would think
inspection
so,
period.
yes.
Dr. Sutherland, you had mentioned that at least that's what I thought I heard, was that that building was going to be used for administrative space as well. Has there been a change in direction for that? Is it just, I'm glad it's all alternative school, but I thought there was also a need for that as well.
It's definitely a need. It depends on how much space becomes available because the number of leases available on the top floor are some of the ones that don't expire for the longest. And so that probably has the least amount of reliability for students on that top floor. So that's where administrative space would go. So that's the one that right now doesn't seem like top of the. And we've also transitioned some of our staff that are available to work from home. We've started doing a little bit of that too.
Nice to work from home remotely.
One more question.
4 people, so not a large group. So before anybody really gets
You need to
excited, it
increase
is
some more.
4 insurance
You
benefit
can do your
specialists.
meetings
so
from home.
4 people,
Just make
not a
sure you
large
dress
group.
Yeah.
on the bottom.
I knew how
think
that
it's
was going to
great
live in
that
the
we
world
let
of
people
principals
work
as soon as I said it.
Trey, can we have an update whenever you get to it on Holloway and changing the virtual school there and kind of what's
I can give
being,
you, I can give you one right now, right off the cuff. What would you like to know?
like to know?
All right, so virtual school possibly going to Holloway.
Right.
Dr. Sullivan gave me the go-ahead a couple of weeks ago to write the contract to the architect. I've got their fees, I wrote their contract, it left today, went to them via email. I have a meeting scheduled for next week. They have already received, I had a preliminary meeting with them 2 weeks ago, and I gave them our designs on what we thought. We've already kicked the tires and been around it and kind of know what it's going to take. The holdup's going to be, and I don't mean holdup, we're moving forward. They're already working on design.
Okay.
So I would expect in the next 3 to 6 weeks, I'll have some type of preliminary floor plan back from them. Dr. Chastain and I have already talked about it a couple of times. I've got Dr. Subicon's ideas, and I've heard all of her wishes, and we're looking at it. And I think most of them can be accommodated. But it will ultimately be a conversation with Dr. Chastain, Dr. Sullivan, and I to see what we can maximize and get there. We do have a couple of hurdles. There's a plumbing issue, nothing that we cannot overcome. It will have to go to the State Fire Marshal's office for review. Once the state approves it, then it'll have to go to the city for their review and comment.
Okay.
I cannot give you a time frame on that.
I understand.
My goal, my short-term goal is by Christmas, I would like to have something on the street to bid so that I can have a hard number and turn somebody loose. What that will mean is that virtual school is probably going to be at John Coleman for the better part, if not all of this year.
I think they were expecting that.
And that's not a surprise.
Right.
My goal would be, if at the spring break we can move them, I've moved schools at Christmas, I've moved them at spring break. Anytime we can get something ready, we move somebody
Right.
to get them into their new place. If I can get them there before spring break, we'll move them.
Okay.
But my goal is by Christmas to have something on the street, be back before you with here's what it's going to cost, y'all say go, and we have something ready by spring break. That's my goal.
You answered all my questions. Thank you so much.
Glad to.
I have one more since we were talking about Holloway. Made me think about the elevator.
Okay.
How are we coming on that?
We received our permit 2 weeks ago. The contractor has mobilized, and they began work this week. They will be through sometime around Christmas.
Okay.
Since we're asking,
Due to our delay in getting the permit, I had to extend their contract 2 weeks, which is not an unreasonable request.
No, but at least
I
we're
was
getting
actually
it.
thinking they were going to ask for 4, but they asked for 2. So we've extended their contract date 2 weeks.
Okay.
Number 15.
Our satisfaction survey to our retirees, our Medicare Advantage plan, getting those back this week. We sent those out on Monday. If they didn't have an email, we did send a mailer home. The majority of them are coming back satisfied with where the plan is, and it was good to hear from a lot of feedback from our former retirees. So it looks like at this time we're set with staying with the county general for our retirees. But we'll have a full picture of that once everybody responds. And also, I placed on your tables tonight the numbers that you requested. I looked back at this time last year, and we've declined, we've gone down 15% on our openings. We still have quite a few openings, but it's 15% less of where we were last year. And that stays that way pretty much all the time.
there's 500 open positions. Yeah, crazy. And talking about safety, we are covered with all SROs at every school, at least one person at a middle school, elementary school, high school. We have at least one SRO.
We have at least one position at each one. If somebody is,
position, okay.
if somebody is out, the sheriff's department has a rotation to cover it. And
That's
they're their employees, they're not ours, so we don't get to pick and choose who covers what, but.
Metro is in a different
Yes, they are.
position.
They're in a different,
It was on TV that we were one of the 3 counties that were completely covered.
Wow.
So that looked really good for us.
Yes.
As they were announcing that for Metro.
It's a big thank you to the sheriff's department as well for,
Huge.
Yes, thank you.
Number 16.
All right, so number 16, I was trying to think of what it was. Oh, it's me. Several things, if you don't mind, John, if I can connect. So a couple things I want to hit on just quickly. One of those being, and I'll send this to everybody, I don't really think you'll care a whole lot about it. The state finally released their TISA guide that was supposed to be out in January. It came out on July 1st. So a lot of this is things that as a board member you're not necessarily going to care about because it is truly how we're each dollar calculated. This is more for our team. But there is one thing that caught me a little bit by surprise, and it deals with the fast-growing infrastructure or fast-growing stipend. So this is on page 32, and it talks about the funds available for, zoom that in, the funds available for fast growth funds are set annually by the General Assembly's appropriations. For the 23-24 school year, $35 million has been included in the state budget, with up to $10 million being available for infrastructure. That is different than what I had heard in the past. I had heard that $30 million was available for infrastructure. But this is saying 10 million of that 35 million is for infrastructure. So to think that infrastructure funds are really going to help us at all, we may be able to do a small HVAC something or some carpet. I mean, there's not a lot split across the state that's going to do. The other part that is a little bit concerning is that the number we've always been told is that you'll be a fast-growing district if you reach 1.25% for that fast-growing student stipend, and then you had to hit 2% to get the infrastructure. This talks about how you only get increased funding once you reach that 1.25, and you only get it for 1.25 and above, not that initial 1.25% of kids you grow. So there definitely some, not the way that was presented that I saw in the TISA guide today. I need to study it a little bit further, but I'll send this to you just so that you have it. Again, a lot of this isn't details that you need to worry about. It's our attendance people. It goes through and talks about the payments, all the different, let me do just so I can show you when the different payments, that may have been the wrong word to choose to search. Of course it would be. But it is our annual calendar of when we get payments. There's a couple things that, and we've talked about this before, so you will see December 15th, the payment comes out, the data is pulled for the next one on December 16th, and then we only have that 20-day window to make changes. Well, we have students who enroll with us all the time. We have to wait on the other district to release them in EIS. So there's going to be some challenges here, but districts have been talking about this for 3 years with TISA. So again, still huge benefit to us, but there's going to be some things that aren't as great as we initially thought. Other portion I wanted to talk about, so the state today released district level data. We do have just initial school level data, but that is still embargoed. And so when we are talking about data for our schools, there's really two big things you're going to hear us talk about a lot. You're going to hear us talk about achievement, which is that one snapshot in time. How did students perform on the 4 performance categories? We are used to talking about that on 3rd grade. Whether they got that mastered and on track category, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for as well for kids to be considered proficient. One caveat I would add to that is that that number changes by grade level and by subject. So ELA is a perfect example. 6th and 7th grade, you have to get 34 right. For some reason, when you get to 8th grade, I believe you have to, is it 39, 38, 39? Yeah, you have to get 4 more questions right to be considered proficient. So sometimes when you see that drop in performance across the board, and we'll do a whole lot more discussion around there over the next couple months. Last year, academics wasn't necessarily the focus, but we'll start learning some of that together as a board. Sometimes you'll see the proficiency scores, and it may be that the kids didn't perform any different, just the range is different of what's considered proficient. All that to say, if you are looking for it, you are going to, at least today, have to Google, and I'll show you where it is. I Googled Tennessee State Report Card, because if I went to the actual report card link, it did not show up. And then on the State Department's website, it is under News with Today. You click on that, and then it is going to say the new interactive state dashboard right now. I'm sure they'll have the other link corrected within the day or so, but it brings you to the state report card. And this is what the state report card looks like. And then you'll just type in Rutherford. And then this is key. This is not the full release of the entire report card. This is just an initial snapshot of district performance. So we talked about achievement, that one snapshot in time. We don't have growth level data yet. We don't have chronically absent. We don't have a lot of that stuff yet. It's about a 6 to 12 week release of information to where the final report card doesn't get released until November. So we have a long time, but this is just to give you an idea of where our proficiency levels are. If you'll click on 2023 district assessment, all this other stuff shows growth. This is all last year. So truly the only thing that you need to focus on is the 2023 district assessment. If you click on that, it is then going to show you performance level district results. Of course, we want all of our students to be proficient, but we are definitely trending in the right direction. So this is and you'll notice it's ELA overall. So ELA overall, 45.7% of our students are proficient, mastered, or on track. And then these other charts show you what we want to look at is we want our orange and red to be getting smaller, and we want our green and blue to be getting larger, unless your green bar is moving to this teal bar over here. So these top two levels, mastered, on track, approaching below, just like we're used to talking about with third grade, same exact system. So you will see we had 12% of our students for English language arts who were exceeding expectations compared to 10% last year. So that's a district our size. I mean, it's a substantial number of kids who increase. Same thing from 33.4 or from 31.9 to 33.4. So again, another percentage and a half of percentage students there. So an increase in ELA. We had an increase overall in all of them, math as well. Math is still our lower one. High school, it's not going to be any surprise. We have changed that for the future. We are no longer on that integrated 1, 2, and 3 path, but we still were last year. Our math scores for high school are still in the 20s, which is where they have been. Most districts are under that integrated approach are there. I expect quite honestly, a bigger jump just because we switch, partially just because that's what teachers are comfortable with, not necessarily that there was some huge change. But that is what lowers some of our math scores. The other part that lowers our math scores, you'll see with our teacher openings, is content when you get to the high school level. And then you will see science had an increase as well to 50.3, and then social studies has an increase to 52.3. So definitely trending in the right direction. This is all the data that is there. You can break it down a little bit further if you want to look at elementary, middle, and high school. It's going to show you just kind of the breakdown between grades. And again, the big thing to focus on are those overall, you're looking for those top 2 performance categories. And we are definitely wanting to focus on this third category. We like to call those our bubble students who are close to getting to proficiency. And when you're in a district that has a large number, that means you have a large number of kids that can move. Your kids that are showing down here are students who largely, and that would probably fit our population trend pretty well, students that have some type of learning disability, they may need extra supports, and they're more than 1 grade level behind. And so looking at that data. Again, we'll discuss this in a lot of detail over the next couple months. I hope that you can nerd out a little bit with me over the next couple months as we look at achievement data, because that's really what it matters in our growth, is what our kids are doing each and every day in the classroom.
And I'm confident that our high school, just with the changing the math to the old school, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, those scores are going to turn around, and we're going to be very pleased with where we're going.
And this doesn't show a huge portion, but you can also look at it by student subgroups, because we're held accountable by subgroups, and you'll notice the bars are all going in the right direction as well, which is where you want them to definitely be moving in the right direction. Statistically, you're looking for somewhere between a 1% and 5% change every year if you're moving in the right direction, and they're all there, so that's good.
One of the
Fourth year
things.
in math, is it is not a required, is it still, it is required? but
Required
is
to
it
have 4
elective?
years in math, but it is not a tested subject.
It's not tested, okay, that's right. So they can take like statistics or anything like that.
Thank goodness that's not a tested subject.
I love statistics. That was one of my favorite classes.
Do you agree, Dr. Chastain? I'm glad it's not. Short answer is yes. So happy to answer any of that kind of question, but again, this is just the very initial release. I don't expect anything else probably till we get growth data sometime in August. That usually gets embargoed, and then we'll have school level data, reward, all that kind of stuff towards the end of August with a full release in November. So it's a long, drawn out process. The part that is frustrating for schools, and I think I've mentioned to you before, is that we currently, so what we have to hit, they're called AMOs, annual measurable objectives. We don't have AMOs yet for last year's test that we took. So as a district and as a school, it is really hard. You're going to get a letter grade for how did you perform when the federal government and the state are in an argument over what those scores, how they should be calculated. So scores are going to get a letter grade, and they have the test they took last April, they should have been working on from August to April. They still don't know what their target was. And so we've been told last year's target should come out sometime in the fall. Well,
Oh, wow.
that's great to know of last year's target.
Yeah, late.
But that's just bureaucracy that gets in the way, so a little frustrating.
One
But
of the-
overall, lots of reason to celebrate.
One of the things that we've talked about, probably ad nauseum, talking about the third grade test and how it tests on those standards, but it doesn't really test on whether or not a child can read. But our science and social studies scores, folks, prove our children are reading, because that, they have to be able to read to do that well on those tests.
And comprehend.
So, and comprehend. So we're doing a good job. You know, those scores in science and social studies.
Good job. That's
And
awesome.
so it does let you know we're doing a good job in reading.
Maybe that also could be Dr. Anthony, Dr. Chastain, and myself. We're all science and math people as well. So maybe
Okay.
we need to add an ELA person
Okay.
to the team, and we'll be all
That's
right.
true. But it does prove that our children are reading, and they are comprehending, and they are inferencing, and they are doing all the things that we are teaching them how to do, transferred into other subjects.
Dr. Sullivan, would you like to do the open positions while we're?
So you've got this, Dr. Anthony mentioned it, thank you for compiling that. So it's raw data because it comes straight from our school, so it's a little outdated the second that you get it. So we have lost some teachers this week. I mentioned that in an email to you last week, that as other districts have growth positions become available, I mean, we've had a couple teachers even this week who took jobs with multiple counties, decided which classroom they liked better, and that's the county they went to. So that actually happened today, so not making that one up. So those are things that happen in this day and age with teachers being in such short supply, so we want to make sure we keep all the ones that we possibly can and recruit and retain all the ones that we have. But you'll see openings, ones that are not going to be a surprise to you. Special education continues to be an area. Thank goodness for our grow your own positions, or we would be even bigger area, so we're in a lot better shape there. You will see a couple schools that are of a concern, Roy Waldron being one of those. That was a concern last year. They're our hardest staff school. Our schools on the north end struggle. One, just because affordability in Rutherford County. Second, because they border Metro Nashville. And so that is definitely a struggle. I do want to give kudos to Dr. Jackson. I believe in her leadership because she made hard employment decisions knowing that she may have openings, but she wanted to make sure that the level of academics rigor was for her students regardless of what her applicants were. You will see Laverne High School is in a lot better shape than they have been in a long time. Blackman Elementary School as well, so that was a hard-to-staff school. That's not a hard-to-staff school right now. Overall, with teachers not returning for 2 weeks, this is a much more manageable number when you were looking at our district of having almost 3,600 certified staff. Yes, in the 70s is nowhere near where we want to be, but you're still in the 2% range. And you don't want any, but compared to where other places are, I'll take it.
Can I ask specifically about custodians?
Yep.
2 schools
Large high schools, yep.
Yeah, Laverne and Riverdale. And these numbers have stayed high.
Yep.
What is your plan?
Mr. Lee just said, call on me, please.
The best plan would be to temporarily relocate some custodians from other schools there.
Can we do that?
Well, no.
Not in policy the way it is right now.
Okay.
So this was, attacking salaries was kind of our last shot as a district to say we've done just about everything that we know how to do. The next step would be to create some type of group of custodians that we are looking at that can go in and fill in.
Some type of, I call it, I hate to use the term consolidation, but some type of general oversight, kind of like the cafeteria, nutrition, where we have the ability to move people around. Currently, I don't have that authority. We can request, we can ask, we can plead. That has not worked. For the last half of this year, we've allowed EAs to assist in the afternoon. We've allowed other custodians to come from other schools and go there and work. Our staff here has been working at Riverdale every day for 4 or 5 hours before they come here. Right now, because it's a new year, we were able to end the year last year with this additional help because we had those open positions, there was funds available. So we utilized those funds for other folks to come in and get overtime. Starting in a new year, you don't have any additional funds available, even though you know you've got an open position. We were giving it time because the new pay scale is actually just went into effect last week, 2 weeks ago. So I'd say give it a few weeks to see if they're able to pick a couple up. I do know Riverdale has one that was through the state-funded, I call it labor force service. They're out there where you can call up and get a laborer for the day. There's a state contract that's just for custodians. We issued them a large purchase order last year to provide us help. They paid more than we did. They were able to provide us one. They spent all year.
For one.
We wrote them a purchase order for over $250,000, and they were able to provide us with one person. We have now.
We tried.
We have now cut the ties on that purchase order. We've worked through the legal part of him working for them, and he's going to be a new employee for us. He's leaving that firm and going to work for Riverdale full time. So one of those 6 positions at Riverdale is fixing to be filled.
Okay.
So we're going to be down to 5.
And I would not be in favor where we are right now because this is the conversation you have. There are pros and cons to the consolidation with cafeteria. I'm not sure consolidating all of our schools at this point when 46 of them are in good shape. I don't want to also punish is the wrong word. I don't want to cause a negative consequence for our schools that have it staffed and then people quit. So it's a you don't win.
I'm just shocked that with the upgrades we made them pay.
Well, that's what we're hoping. The word's getting out now that pay scale is in place. All of our classified employees get their first check this Friday on the new scale, and I'm hoping that there's a lot of conversation that says, wow, this was really done well. And that now that they will see it in the form of a check, they'll talk to their friends, or maybe they'll talk to some people that have worked for us and left, and maybe they'll come back. That's kind of our hope going into the first few weeks. After that, the only option we really have is to begin to transfer 1 to 2 on a temporary basis. It wouldn't be a permanent thing, but transfer them until we can get some help. But that would require you guys to allow us to transfer.
Can I ask, I don't know who it would really fall to, but I kind of hearing that maybe an option would be to try to get a grouping of custodians that don't mind kind of rotating through the different schools. And would that be something that would maybe get maybe a bump in pay like our hard-to-staff schools, that someone that's willing to actually rotate amongst the district?
One of the things that has been a benefit and what really helped is this year, because we had so many open positions, we allowed them, an employee does not get overtime, they get comp time. We waived that rule and we were paying them overtime. So that was an incentive.
We've tried all kinds of.
We've been very creative with, and there for a while, we had a good number. We had positions covered and everybody was happy. As we got closer after spring break, as we got closer to the end of the year, those people were tired. They had worked 55, 60 hours a week, and they're getting to the end and they're like, I'm done. I just can't. And unfortunately for us, our custodial demographic, and if I ask Dr. Anthony to verify, I'm going to say it's 50 plus would be our average. Wow. And I'm sorry, that personnel does not last, working overtime. And I don't mean that.
Because it's
No, yeah.
It just
it's
is.
a very
I'm
physically taxing
turning
job.
60 this year, and the days of me running a weed eater for 5 hours a day on the side of my pond at my farm is over. I do 3 hours. And
Speaking of, thank you for the improvements on the grass this year.
Oh, yes,
no
problem.
If I don't get anything else right, we did improve grass cutting. It has rained. It'll probably ruin that, but it has improved so far.
Well, we busted those contracts and we changed it to where we had a little more leverage. But so to answer your question, we are trying different things. And if I'm willing to try, we can send an email out or to the employees, would you be willing for, if we were to pay you time and a half instead of time, would you be willing to travel for a while?
Yeah, almost like a
And find
traveling,
out who's interested.
like a traveling nurse. They always get paid more. Yeah, just have somebody, a
And
group of them.
there would be some takers, but I can tell you this much. The school that they leave, that principal's going to wear you out because now you've taken his people and now he's short or she's short. They're not as hospitable to losing an employee as you would think and being a team player. They're team players when they need them, but when they find out one of theirs has got to go, they don't like it.
So I heard that you guys were using EAs. Could that incentive be offered to EAs too? Is it offered time and a half if they stay after to help clean?
As long as the money is available
It's hard to track it
in the budget, and it's very difficult to track because here's the problem, and I don't want to sound derogatory. If we were halfway through the year and we knew we had tons of money left, it's easy. You just turn them loose and go. You're trying to watch them because now every hour they work, I'm paying them another half hour. So they do 2 hours of work and I'm paying them 3. It's very easy for that to spin and get ahead of you. And then if we hire somebody, we're in a negative situation. That's why we were so conservative would be the term, that we didn't get too aggressive with this till about Christmas. Now, the thing that we did do this year is last year when we did the waxing for the schools, it was just the schools that had summer school because they were the ones that were going to be behind because summer school was there and they couldn't do their normal work. So we outsourced it. We offered it to everybody this year, and we had a large number of these schools sign up. So we were able to help them by doing the summer waxing, which helped them get through the summer with reduced personnel. So it puts them going into the school year as far as a cleanliness standpoint and waxing and that sort of thing. It puts them on even playing field, maybe a little bit ahead of everybody else. So they're not, even though they've been short all summer, they're not going into the school year behind. So when I say we've been creative, we've been creative to try and help them as much as we can. And I have no problem throwing things out there and asking them, but we're into this budget year and our budget is fixed, and I'm a little scared, and Brian's a little more nervous than I am, when I start coming up with ideas, because he's the one who's got to,
Right, find the money.
we're both keeping up with the money, and we both we're able to talk dollars. So I'm a little leery right off the jump to jump into a lot of paying overtime and offering incentives that we didn't budget for.
Gotcha.
We were hoping that this pay scale, that after the first one or two, that we would see a bump. In all
We have, it's
honesty,
not in the 60s of openings anymore, so it's better.
much better than it was, because we were looking at 55 to 60 people this time last year. So I do see some light, and I think we're just going to have to ride it for a few more weeks, maybe a month, to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm seeing a huge improvement here, but we still have about 5 schools that need to be on our radar, from a teacher, EA, and custodian. And we just need to make sure that we continue to focus on this, because this is part of our strategic plan. We need these schools 100% staffed. It's hard for me to want to hold a principal accountable for a school when they don't have all the staffing another school has. So I just think we've got to be careful there.
Ms. Rosales, do you have anything for TLN or?
Well, the only thing that I have is to remind everyone of the meeting that we're going to have with the chairman of the Education Department, Mark White, and our state delegation in August. So I think it's August 7th. I didn't look at my notes, but I'll send it the 17th as a reminder of that. I also have requested Dr. Sullivan to provide a little bit more data as to how the law impacted us, and there's several data points. I think it'd be good for them to know how it impacted them overall, and then some of the issues that we went into as we were trying to execute the law, and what is going to be shared with them is also going to be sent to the governor's office as well, because I've been in conversation with them, and so they know that this is coming. So I'm waiting till the meeting in August to provide them as well. That's all I have, really.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps the school board is going to Gatlinburg this weekend for summer law. Perhaps that's some information that we can give them there as well. Because, I mean, everybody's going to be talking about it. I'm surprised they didn't just have one session on it, but no, they probably don't. They probably don't, because last year people got pretty upset when we were in convention in November. So there were some very, very unhappy people, but I'm thankful we've made it. We've done a good job. Everybody's happy, and Dr. Sullivan, thank you so much, and Dr. Chastain for your leadership on that. Any other discussion?
I hope that we can get, maybe next meeting, a report of what we're going to be doing for alternative schools. I think there's some changes that we've done. I've heard them, but if we can just get them all, the changes together, that'd be great.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to dismiss. Oh, sorry.
Don't have to.
I'm sorry.
We're adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.